Hello and welcome to our podcast, Angry at the Right Things. It is Bronwyn and
Katie.
Katie is going to make out with the mic. Here we are. And we are going to have a hopefully shorter podcast today. I want to do them more frequently and just shorter because I know an hour average is a long time for most people. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. It's
Okay.
hard to fit in an hour.
Yeah. So today we are going to talk about learned helplessness.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in that topic
Yeah. Why are you interested?
because I feel like a lot of that goes on in my family. And I definitely play a role in it myself. So I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay. I don't know that I'm going to be able to really unroot what's behind it. This is more my own interaction with a former friend, a now former friend, who gives into the learned helplessness and what I've realized from it.
Yeah.
But I will say that learned helplessness, I view, goes part and parcel with borderline personality disorder. It's a type of BPD where that person sees themselves always as like the helpless, innocent victim.
Yeah. Okay. So this is like a pathological level of learned helplessness.
It is, but it can be on a spectrum like all BPD. I mean, I think I've done it myself in my life.
Oh, sure.
And it's just, again, it's just a level of denial that we have where we don't want to own some things and self-nurture. We just kind of refuse to self-nurture.
Right. Well, it's kind of like, it makes me think of that thing where people tend to kind of revert to their more childlike self when they're around maybe their parents or their family sometimes.
Absolutely.
I don't know if anybody's experienced that.
Nobody.
Phenomenon.
I'm sure nobody's ever done that.
All of a sudden you're like talking like a sullen teenager, you're like,
wow. Time travel, right?
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. I wonder if that is linked. I mean, yeah. So I guess if we're going to talk about what's underneath it, I mean, yeah, as far as psychology, I would say that this is a person who didn't get adequate nurture from their parents, and they kind of have gotten stuck at kind of a very young age where they still are kind of demanding that others nurture them, and they're refusing to kind of grow up and say, I'm going to nurture myself. I'm going to stop blaming everyone, and I'm going to take responsibility for myself. I think they're just kind of stuck.
Yeah.
And again, I've been that person.
And it's a kind of it's one of the thinking traps of like always blaming everything on other people. Like never taking responsibility for your own problems.
Yeah. So
your own role in your problems.
Yes, like we've talked about externalizers.
Yeah.
This is someone who's more of an externalizer. It doesn't mean they don't also have the ability to internalize, and the more internalizing meaning having introspection, taking ownership of himself, the better, of course, versus externalizing their needs and their nurture to others and the blame. However, it is a spectrum, and it's really about kind of the ratio of how much we're doing that. And so this particular person, who I'm going to call Mary today, she did have the ability to internalize and have introspection. And that's why I think it took me over 20 years to kind of end the friendship, was because I saw a lot of hope. I saw a lot of ability to internalize and have that self-reflection and self-awareness and ownership. But over that 20-year period, I think especially towards the end, I realized, there's way too much externalizing going on and not enough taking responsibility and ownership. And I'm not seeing this grow. I'm not seeing any growth, forward momentum in this. And I just had to give up.
Yeah.
And so again, I've been like that person myself. I've done the externalizing myself, but I, over time, have chosen to stop. And that's not easy. And I'm not saying that it's easy and that we're born doing this well. But I think it's really our posture, our inward disposition, our choice to wake up and grow up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what matters.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where the hope lies.
All right.
And if there isn't hope, if there isn't forward momentum, even when you've confronted this individual, which I did, then it's time to give up hope.
Yeah.
Right? This isn't like a black or white binary type of situation or phenomenon.
Right.
So, yeah. So I'm going to share about Mary. That's not her real name. And here's what I realized. I realized over time, she does not trust me and never has. This is all very borderline. This is all very, very borderline. I realized she is envious of me, that I'm thinner, that I'm married. Those are the two specific things I know of. Mm-hmm. And she fosters hatred towards me that I have just started to see some in the present. And then I've seen in retrospect, looking back, that that's always been the case. I want to just pause and just have this said as a freebie. People who harbor self-hatred also feel hatred towards others, even if they don't want to admit it. That's just human nature. So if you know someone who you see hates themselves, you can be sure whether they show it to you or not, they probably hate you to some degree, especially when you're doing better than them in their mind. And they're harboring hate towards others. Again, they might hide that, but it's there.
Right. Why do you think that is?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it goes along.
I absolutely believe that. I have seen very subtle and small glimpses of Mary's hatred towards me all along. I didn't want to believe it, so I ignored it. And I told myself otherwise. But there were little microaggressions throughout our friendship, references to my looks, what I can get away with because of my looks, and also references to how I'd never understand because I'm not single. I just wouldn't understand. So helplessness, that's the learned helplessness. Well, it's like, well, you could be thinner too, Mary, but I guess I don't understand how hard it is for you to lose weight. Right? Or you could also get married, but I guess you're just a helpless victim of your circumstances, right?
Right.
So that's the learned helplessness that I just kept running into, and it wasn't budging. So Mary prefers to choose to see herself as the victim versus to choose to eat healthy foods and exercise, which again, I am not negating that is hard for people. I am fortunate growing up. My coping mechanism was actually doing gymnastics. And that saved my mental health growing up. And I am fortunate that was like actually a really positive coping mechanism.
Yeah.
I also overate as a kid too, but I never like became overweight because I just wouldn't stop doing gymnastics. So I understand overeating is a way to self-soothe, and I get that, and I'm not blaming or shaming, and I'm thankful that I didn't only have that as mine, and I have been overweight, but I haven't been, super overweight. But yeah, it really is a choice too, and it's easier for some than others, but it is also a choice, and we can't act like it's not. So she feels that her obesity entitles her, and her life circumstances of being single entitles her to derive unilateral nurture from me.
Right. So is that because when you said that this person who has self-hatred, when a person has self-hatred, they also, of course, that means they feel hatred towards probably a lot of the people in their life.
Yeah.
It makes you think, why do they stay in relationship with someone that they feel hatred towards? But it's because they're getting something from it, right? They're getting the nurture.
From me, she got nurture. And looking back, I am thankful for some of that because our friendship actually is kind of what helped compel me to go back to school and become a therapist and think I could do it because I played therapist to Mary for so many years.
Right.
And so I got something out of it too. It did feel good to like give her empathy and listen to her and feel like I was helping her. What didn't feel good looking back is that I couldn't challenge her. I wasn't allowed to suggest anything. Or if I did suggest anything, that would never work. And there was always a reason. She was always just, it was too hard. None of those suggestions, none of those challenges work. And there were even times when I challenged her and she got angry and kind of like defiant, like she was my child. And I felt like she was rebelling against the challenge. And it's like, no, if I'm a therapist does both. They nurture, they support, they empathize, and they also challenge.
Right. I heard this term recently, which is just new to me, which is your growth edge.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard that before? Like pushing you past your growth edge.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know what? That's not even limited to a good therapist. That's a good friend. Right. That's a good parent. That's just good. You can't just enable people. You do show empathy, you do support, but when it is true and valid, you also do challenge. Now, do most people err on the side of only challenging? Yes, most therapists even. All they do is challenge. All they do is say, well, have you gone out and gone for a run? Are you going out for walks? Are you eating right? And they don't show enough support and nurture or even try to understand. And so it is this balance of doing all of that, but that's what is loving. Love is doing both.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Right?
There's a balance.
But enabling people is not loving.
Oh no. I mean, people think they think they're being loving, but it's just stagnating.
Yeah. That's not love. So yeah. I realize now that that's all she wanted was empathy and understanding. I pushed her once. I suggested the book that you suggested, Britt Frank. That was so good. And I thought I bought it. No, I got it from the library. I read it and I thought I think this would be good for Mary because it's just how it's written even. I thought it would be good for her and what she was going through at the time. And so I suggested the book to her on the phone and I realized she showed interest, but I realized, oh, she's never going to go buy this. And she's also never going to get it from the library. Mm-hmm. So for her birthday, I bought it for her. She didn't really read it. That was part of her little rebellion. I think she felt like resentful that I was expecting her to read it when I followed up. And she's like, I just kind of, glanced over it. And I was really disappointed. And I felt like she was angry at me for having an expectation of her. So yeah, there's just too much victim status here. There's just too much helpless victim status. She would say things like, you don't know what it's like. You're married. You're thin. I'm just perpetually disadvantaged. You have no idea. And this applies to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor
me. So when my eyes started to open, which is recently, I started getting gut issues. Which is what I talked about last episode, I started feeling voraciously hungry.
Yeah, I remember you told me that.
Yeah. And I caught myself and I'm like, I think this has to do with Mary. I think my gut was like, you thought Mary wanted to nurture you. You thought this was a nurturing friendship and your eyes are being opened, that she only kind of nurtures you just as much as necessary for you to give the nurture.
To keep you around.
Yeah. And my gut got very hungry. I started overeating for a few days. And then I said, I think this is psychosomatic. And then I wrote Mary a goodbye letter. And my gut immediately stopped being voraciously hungry. I mean, immediately. And you know what's crazy? My hair started being more curly. Yeah. Even Edie, my daughter, was like, Mom, your hair's curlier. What happened? I go, well, I wrote Mary a goodbye letter. She's like, yep, that'll do it. It's so funny because so many women, we think, my hair, it's hormones, and it is. But how are our hormones being impacted by our emotional state?
Yeah.
Don't just blame it on hormones. Like, why are hormones going crazy? Ask that. Ask what's going on where my hair is happy again. My hormones are happy again.
Yeah. Right. It's like this low level oppression.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Your
whole being is being oppressed by this unhealthy connection.
Absolutely. So, writing my goodbye letter, in which I summarized my experience of Mary in order to reflect back to her, reminded me of a poem from high school that I want to say kind of saved my life. I told you about this poem. Mm-hmm. I don't remember what it was called. I don't remember most of the poem. I do remember when I was in typing class in high school, I typed this poem over and over and over the whole 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And I can't believe I don't remember it all, actually, even though that was technically almost what?
That dates us, doesn't it?
Yeah,
that we had typing class. Oh my gosh.
But anyway, this poem, man, it just spoke to me. It was about, and it saved my life because I had a major crush guy that rejected me, and that rejection just made me want to die. I wasn't actively suicidal, but I was actively miserable. And this poem was about unrequited love. And all I remember are 2 lines, and I think they were the last 2. And they were the most powerful for me. And the author of the poem says, "You learn to plant your own garden instead of waiting for someone to bring you flowers." And to this day,
that's so awesome.
Love that line. So beautiful.
It is.
I needed that.
It is.
It gave me hope somehow. And it made me feel a little empowered too. Like, oh, I need to plant my own damn garden.
Yeah.
Stop waiting for the flowers.
Everybody needs to plant their own garden.
Yeah.
Like, I think we should be teaching that in kindergarten.
Yeah. Plant your own damn garden. Let's plant a damn garden, kids, right now. So, and then the last line that I remember was the author says, "You learn and you learn. With every goodbye, you learn." Mm-hmm. And why that is coming back to me for my goodbye letter with Mary is because at that time when I read that poem, I only thought it applied to romantic relationships, that with every goodbye you learn. And now I'm like, oh, it also applies to every goodbye, like Mary and former friendships. Because with every goodbye, I learn. What do I learn? What have I learned with Mary? I have learned, as much as I enjoy nurturing others, I can no longer throw my pearls before swine.
Yeah.
I learn you can't nurture a black hole.
Yeah.
A never-ending black hole. And someone who perpetually sees himself as a helpless, innocent victim of circumstances is a black hole. And it will wear you out.
Yeah. I would say, not to be corny and rhyming, but nurturing a black hole, like, steals your soul. Right?
Yeah.
It's a little bit at a time.
Like a dementor.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think that's kind of when my body, my hair curl came back and everything, or more of it came back.
Yeah.
Some black holes I also learned some black holes are much more subtle than others. Like with Mary, it took over 20 years for me to see it.
Yeah.
So she was subtle.
Very.
And not acknowledging the truth about Mary and thus betraying myself makes me physically sick. I've also learned how to engage in real time with people like Mary who echo Mary, which is why I'm going to talk about Carrie.
Okay.
I'm changing names of all these women.
All right.
Another friend, Carrie. So right after everything's going down with the goodbye letter to Mary, which I sent, I emailed, my daughter, Edie, recently saw Carrie because she's good friends with Carrie's daughter.
Okay.
Who lives out of town. And Carrie asked about me, and Edie reported that back to me. And Carrie supposedly said that she wants to come see me.
Okay.
And so Edie reported that to me. Now, giving you some background, when I last communicated with Carrie, I had invited her to my birthday party at my house about a year ago. She said she couldn't get out of work, which is what she said the year before too. And she didn't come both those 2 times. But in truth, she wasn't forthcoming about saying she had to work. She just didn't respond to the e-bite. She was the only person who didn't RSVP. So I had to reach out to her and say, hey, are you able to make it? And that's when she told me she had to work, just like the year before. And the other thing I want to say is that when I have reached out to Carrie in the past through text, I usually have to reach out more than one text before she responds. So this is a pattern. When she finally told me she couldn't make it to my birthday party, she didn't apologize for not making it. She did not send a card or a gift or say, hey, let's get together another time. She did none of that. And so, given that that was almost a year ago, when Edie recently told me she saw Carrie and that Carrie said she wanted to come see me, initially I hesitated, but then after a day, I'm like, you know what? I'll just give Carrie another chance. So I texted her. And actually, let's preface that. New Bronwyn texted her. Carrie hasn't met New Bronwyn yet, by the way. Well, she has now. Yeah. But until now, she hasn't met New Bronwyn. And New Bronwyn isn't much older, but she's quite a bit wiser. And she's always evolving because she's always learning. With every goodbye, she learns. And so here is the text thread. I'm just going to share it with y'all. New Bronwyn. Hello, stranger. Are you interested in making a trip to Sacramento sometime soon? Emoji, smiley emoji. No response for 1, 2, 3 days. So New Bronwyn, this is what she responds to the silence with. Instead of just texting back, hey, are you there? New Bronwyn says, Carrie, I hear your silence loud and clear. Thanks for the communication. Carrie, who now responds immediately within minutes, somehow, says, sorry, Bronwyn, I've been working all weekend, not getting home till 8:30 p.m., still at work. Was planning to get back to you, just didn't have a chance. New Bronwyn responded with, that's a familiar one, Carrie. The ball's in your court. If you'd like to continue this friendship, I eagerly await hearing from you. If not, that's okay too. Carrie responds immediately again. Yes, I could have texted sooner. I'm tired. 37 hours in 3 days is a lot, but I don't wish to argue this point. Of course, I want to continue our friendship. I'm not one to keep up contact when I have my own mental health to deal with. And as you know, John has been very ill, both physically and mentally, but getting better, a lot better. There's much more to say on that. Plus, mom moving and issues with Jessie, her daughter. I hunker down at these times, focus on the immediate. Anyway, John and I were just talking about coming up to Sacramento last night, which, based on your earlier text, seemed like something you guys were interested in. So, ... But I'm tired and hot and getting in the shower. I'll be sleeping in tomorrow, then going to a training at work. Can talk this week, though. Good night. What do you think about the amount of information that Carrie shared in response?
It just makes me immediately think of the he that doth protest too much, right?
Yeah.
Like, wow, how about just, man, I suck. I'm sorry I didn't get back to you.
Yeah.
Let's set something up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a sputtering,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So do you hear a little victim-ish status there?
Oh, for sure.
Like my mental health.
For sure.
Okay. Yeah. So you hear a little bit of that. Yeah. No real genuine apology. And especially given this is a pattern. This is not if this were just a 1 or 2 time
real
thing.
genuine apology. And this is a person who is like not young and new in their profession. She's been in this profession for decades. Yeah. I think with a little advance notice, she could totally ask for a Saturday off to visit a friend on their birthday. Yeah. I don't think that would be that hard.
No.
So,
or even like, hey, I'm sorry, but let's get together in February.
I can't, but let's set a time and date to get together because I care about our friendship.
Yeah. Or a card or a gift or something. Or let's talk on the phone. when I'm not working. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So new Bronwyn responds to that very long text with, really briefly, I say, we'd love for you to visit. If you don't want to have a text argument, just thumbs up the text you received from me. Mm-hmm. Where was I? Yeah. Thanks for filling me in on your life. You didn't ask, but I'm doing great. Because notice that it's all about her life and it's all about her, and it's been almost a year and she didn't ask how I'm doing. That's one like very salient.
Yeah.
Feature. Like, you didn't ask how I'm doing.
No. Kind of a red flag.
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm. So there was no response from Carrie, like ever since then. And that's fine. So what I'm doing in my response to Carrie, though, what I want listeners to hear is that I'm communicating, hey, Carrie, I matter too.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing with that kind of sarcastic reply where I say, thanks for filling me in on your life. You didn't ask, but I'm doing great. Is I'm saying, I matter too. And I'm not allowing her to make me back down from that. If Carrie can't handle the new Bronwyn, she doesn't have the privilege of being her friend. I would much rather have fewer friends of high quality, friends who know we both matter, and it's an equitable and reciprocal relationship. I don't have time for friends who make me hungry.
Yeah.
Or hangry.
Yeah. No.
So more background on Carrie really quick. She was one of the few friends who knew that I attempted suicide because Edie told her when that happened. Carrie never reached out to me, not a single phone call or even a text. So there's more context here. So what I want to say is goodbye, Carrie, and thank you for all the learning.
Yeah.
Because with every goodbye, we learn. Any last words on that?
No, I don't think there's really anything else to say about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to talk now about identification.
Okay.
When we identify with people.
Okay.
Because I see this a lot as a therapist where clients will identify with someone. And I want to talk about that more fully and explicitly. So identifying with other people is a powerful tool. The best characters in books and films are the ones we identify with. We're not going to watch ones we can't or read books where we can't identify with the characters. It gives us the ability to empathize. We relate. We say things like, oh, I totally get that. I get it. I get them, right? It also allows us inside information to understand people, their possible motives, and their feelings. And this can give us wisdom as to how to deal with people. Knowing someone's potential motivation allows us to predict what they're going to do. Understanding how they feel helps us to show empathy, to forgive, to show compassion. What is dangerous, though, and what I see happen every day with my clients, and I'm sure I do this too, is when our identification is unconscious. When we don't know we're identifying with someone and we tend to over-identify with them when we're not aware, oh, I'm feeling this way because I'm identifying with this person.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
I'll flesh it out more. Okay. So as humans, I believe we unconsciously identify with all other humans all the time. We're not necessarily aware of it. And that's the key, is like being aware. Because when we're not aware, we're not able to be objective.
No.
And we can over-identify. And we can assume that they have, let's say we're like, oh, I know what they're feeling. I get it. And we're now assuming maybe their motivation behind it, their behavior is the same as ours. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Wiggle room to assume, but we're not objectively going, I'm making an assumption that they have the same objective or motivation underlying their behavior as I do when I engage in that behavior. And when we're assuming and we're not aware, that's when it gets dangerous.
Yeah.
We're losing the ability to be objective. So I want to give some examples. A very common kind of trope example is of a parent who identifies with their child and they're not aware that they're identifying with their child. And if their child gets bullied, the parent is so reactive because it's like the parent feels like she's the one being bullied. Maybe she's kind of reliving the experience of being bullied as a child.
Yeah.
And she's not able to have the objectivity and be the parent in that moment because she's being the child in that moment, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Another example is, and I think people have seen this, is let's say we're watching our kid play soccer and we're acting as if it's us playing soccer and we have no objectivity and we're like overdoing it. We're getting way too caught up in our kids winning and then we should be, and we're not able to just be a healthy parent on the sideline, right? That's a common, very phenomenon, right? Where we're identifying with the kid. We think we are the kid in a way. When I was in a school play in the second grade, I believe, I was a lead. I was the elephant's child in a stupid play called The Elephant's Child. Anyway, my mom came and I didn't see her. She sat in the back, but I learned she cried buckets the entire play. And I thought about that, like as an adult, why did she didn't make herself known to me. I never saw her there. She came and went without me knowing. Why did she sit in the back and cry? Oh, because Caroline thought little Caroline was up on that stage. She was identifying with Bronwyn. She saw herself as a young child crushing it on the stage. Yeah. And that's why she had that response.
Because your mom she was an actress.
Oh, right? Well, she tried. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, she wasn't super successful, but yeah. So that identification. Another common example in parenting is the parent unconsciously identifies what they believe to be a good trait about themselves with one child, such as like having the same gender. And then that child in their mind, this is all unconscious, becomes the all good child. And then the other child, they unconsciously identify what they believe to be a bad trait about themselves. Like, let's say the other child's needy and that parent doesn't like their own neediness. And then that child becomes the all bad child. Yeah. But they're identifying with both those children unconsciously. But the most dangerous identification I see with my clients where they will identify with someone who is what I would call evil or wicked, like the parent. We're talking about the parent. And what they do is they start to think either, I'll give you an example. A client will say to me, I'm realizing I do the same thing my mom does with my kids that she did to me. And then they'll start thinking they're wicked too. Like I've talked about this when I have my borderline personality disorder episode of this podcast, how all my clients will learn about borderline. They'll learn that they have a borderline parent and they'll say to me, am I borderline? Because they do see that they have some similar traits as the parent. And so when we identify like that, we either think I'm just like them and I'm wicked too, or they will be like, that parent isn't that bad because I empathize with them because I get it. But what they're not teasing out is the differences. All they're doing with that identification is seeing the overlap, and there is overlap. We're all human. We all have these things, but they're not going, yeah, there's some overlap. Those are the similarities. Now, what are the differences? And that's what I want to implore everyone to do is to, yes, there are similarities between you and wicked people in your life, but let's also look at the differences. Of course, we're going to have echoes of our parents. Of course, we're going to. That's totally natural, normal. So when our behavior echoes theirs, what is our underlying motivation? Is it to, let's say it's me and I'm interacting with my daughter Edie in a way that my mom interacted with me. What's my underlying motivation though? Is it to shame Edie? Is it to control her? Is it to manipulate? Is it to make her look good so I can feel better about me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, hopefully it's not those things. Was my mom's underlying motivation those things? Yes, it was. Mm-hmm. And so let's look at motivation and let's see if that's different or the same. That's really important. And if I'm just kind of echoing my mom in some ways, because that's just how my default, but my motivation is not to hurt Edie or to make myself look better or feel superior, and my mom's was, take note of that. That doesn't make me wicked just because my behavior is similar, right? Mm-hmm. So also, even if it was similar, even if I saw Edie as a reflection of me and I fat shame her because I want to feel better about me, even if that is true, and that is an ugly thing to see and admit and own, but even if I were to admit that and see that, am I willing to own it and see it and change? Mm-hmm. Hopefully the answer is yes. And that's what I tell my clients. The very fact that you're here in therapy asking me, am I borderline? You're willing to own it. Yeah. Were your parents willing to own it? Were they willing to have that introspection? Mm-hmm. Were they willing to say, oh my God, I'm sorry? Yeah. So our willingness is a reflection of our inner posture, of our heart. Mm-hmm. And that is, at the end of the day, what matters. Am I going to make lots of mistakes and be a shitty person at times? Yes, I am. But am I willing to say, oh my God, I'm being a shitty person right now? That's what matters. Yeah. And do better. And break out of that denial. That's good. I think it's really important to say that. Mm-hmm. Because that's what makes a person wicked, is their unwillingness to own it and break out of denial. And be uncomfortable and have that growth edge. Yeah. Right? If you can't have a growth edge, no, you're on the wicked side. Yeah. Okay. I'm not saying that we're going to grow in all ways at all times, but if you're willing to have a growth edge, that is a really good metric of your heart posture. Yeah. Of your character. Don't you think? Yeah. Being willing to take a step back and see yourself. And see your ugly. See it. Because we all got ugly. Oh, yeah. We all got ugly. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I want to say that. So when we don't look at the differences, when we're only identifying with the similarities with other people, we find ourselves only looking at a part of that person, not the whole. We can easily let them off the hook versus hold them accountable. We can easily refuse or just decline to have the proper boundaries with those people. We could easily end up showing empathy to someone who shouldn't have our empathy because their motivation is not good. We can easily react and be reactive versus being responsive. We can easily project and make assumptions, losing our objectivity. And bottom line, we're believing a lie because we have lost sight of reality. When we're not objective, we're believing a lie and we are not able to live in reality. So when you think of someone and you feel at some level like you relate to them, check yourself. Remind yourself you're not them and you don't know their true motivations. Objectively acknowledge where they might be similar and where they're different and ponder those differences. Good advice. Thank you. I never really thought about that. Like I thought about the seeing yourself in your parents and the discomfort that comes with that. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think about, separating out the differences. Like just because you have some unconscious learned behaviors doesn't mean you're the same. Yeah. You're definitely going to have unconscious learned behaviors because they modeled that for you your whole life. It's default. Yeah. It's your default. You don't even know you're not even aware until you're aware. Yeah. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. Yeah. Yeah. But what's the quote by Maya Angelou? Oh, yeah. We know when you know better, do better. Yeah. Right. And that's the growth edge piece. Yeah.
I like that.
Okay, well, I'm going to wrap up here because I want to try to make these shorter. And guys, again, thank you for listening. Go ahead and share this with a friend if you think it would be helpful or two. Feel free to give me that 5-star review so other people can know this is worth listening to, and subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already. All right. Thanks, guys.